At the same time, when everyone else was making basic motions, you were plotting yours like a grandmaster. The skeptics were stunned as you radically altered the course of events and conquered the game over which they assumed they had perfect control. However, you arrived with chess genius, while they arrived with checker zeal, which is simple, predictable, and amateur. You watched their patterns while they were busy moving their lips, and when they were too excited to celebrate. You studied dangers, and when it came time to attack, you moved so precisely that they had no idea what had happened until you were already celebrating your win. The difference between a player and a boss is that they both played checkers. While you have mastered chess and everyone knows who is in command of the game, you are still playing in their heads. When they looked at you, they knew exactly what you were about. They saw someone they could influence and control, as well as someone who was too weak to participate at their level in the game. They saw your patience as a sign of hesitation, and your quiet as a show of weakness. On the other hand, they failed to grasp that you were not just playing the game. Rather, you were watching, learning, and preparing. In reality, you were the most deadly foe they had ever encountered, despite the fact that they saw you as an easy target. You made them feel they had control of the situation. You kept mute when they talked about their supposed accomplishments, smiled when they misjudged you, and nodded. You grinned when they rejected you. They underestimated you. They thought they could outwit you. However, in truth, you were enabling them to expose their own weaknesses. Every insult, underhanded behavior, and effort to discredit you was a piece of evidence obtained throughout your inquiry. You were not just sitting there. Rather, you were learning how they migrated. The problem with folks who feel they are untouchable is that they stop paying attention to what is happening around them. They enable themselves to be comfy in their fantasies, assuming that you will never fight back since you haven't. On the other hand, you did not speak out while they were too busy celebrating their premature victories since you did not respond. They thought you were weak because you weren't engaged. They thought you were afraid because you didn't compete on the same level as them. They assumed they had won. On the other hand, that is exactly what you wanted others to believe while they were spending their time slandering, plotting, and competing against a version of you that no longer existed. You were working on something of considerable importance. You were not aiming to prove yourself to them or earn their acceptance. Rather, you were focusing on the bigger picture, which included behaviors that were really meaningful. When playing checkers, they were spontaneous, rapid, and emotional. On the other hand, you were playing chess. You were strategic, precise, and immovable. They spent so much time attempting to knock you down that they failed to see that they were the ones standing on an insecure foundation, despite the fact that they created traps for you. You never stepped into them. They mentioned your name in an effort to damage your reputation. However, all they achieved was to make you stronger on the inside. And by the time they realized you weren't who they thought you were, the relationship was over. As you can see, you never needed their approval or had to compete according to their standards. Despite the fact that you gave them the appearance that they were in command, they were just acting in the way you expected them to once you eventually made your move. The game was ended. Checkmate. If your heart is overflowing with God's blessings, let that love radiate. Click the huge thank you button and donate $100 or more to sow seeds of faith that will touch countless lives. Your giving exemplifies His richness. Be a channel for His grace, and watch His kingdom grow through you. Some individuals thought you were an easy target. They were keeping a careful check on you, waiting and ensuring that they were tracking your every move. They assumed they knew where you were going next, how you would respond, and when you would give in to the pressure. Then there was quiet. Your withdrawal did not indicate defeat, but rather mastery. You did not just move quietly. Rather, you took on the guise of an illusion as they consumed your energy. You regained all that had been stolen from you when they expected you to arrive. You stopped showing up after they saw you had become unreliable and untraceable. That's when they started to panic. What you must realize is that the game changes when they are unable to locate you. When you restrict access, when you refuse to communicate, when you stop feeding their egos, they lose control of themselves. Your emotions, presence, and capacity to follow your every move served as the cornerstone for their whole approach. However, you managed to make the most powerful move conceivable. You fled from their clutches, leaving no explanations or warnings. People first assumed you were struggling. Their little games eventually wrecked you, and they persuaded themselves that you had lost, that you were hiding out of shame, and that you had finally been broken. However, the difficulty with individuals who labor from a position of insecurity is that they continuously believe that being silent demonstrates a lack of courage. They thought you had nothing left. But, in truth, you were creating everything that people couldn't see. You've mastered the art of losing out on possibilities. There will be no more predictable replies, no more defending oneself, and no more revealing your next move. When they learned they couldn't connect with you, they became paranoid. Despite the fact that they had evaluated your pages, you did not publish. They inquired about you, but no one was aware of your current activities. Those who previously ignored you now spend their days hunting for signs that you are on the point of collapse. Except there were none, since the ghost move caused you to gain levels rather than lose them. The whole board was changed. It wasn't until they heard your name again that they understood you weren't where they left you. It was no longer feasible to be in the same league with you. They spent time following your steps while you were miles ahead, quietly accumulating victories and planning for something larger. All of this was occurring while you were traveling. This is the thing that sets you apart from them. They play a modest part. They need to be authenticated. They need a support system. On the other hand, you understand that genuine power does not need to make assertions about itself. Genuine power does not seek approval from others. The true power moves discreetly until it is too late to recognize it. They believed they could keep up. They assumed they were in charge. But when you departed, they understood they were mistaken. They are unable to find you at this moment. They could count on a steady routine and structure to boost their egos. They depended on your responses. Your responses provided you with energy, and you could not operate without them. When they provoked you, they expected you to react in some manner. They waited for your return every time they threw doubt. But you abruptly came to a standstill. No more replies, explanations, or access will be provided in the future. As soon as it occurred, the whole game came to an abrupt halt. They were taken aback by the silence. You were supposed to battle for yourself and to prove your value. But when you were working, you let them talk while you pondered. You enabled others to create assumptions. Despite your exalted position, you permitted them to waste their breath. As a result, after you stopped playing their game, they lost control of the board. They began by laughing. They convinced themselves that you'd given up. They managed to convince themselves that you were inconsequential because you didn't disclose their names. Nonetheless, as time passed, you remained silent. Your self-assurance started to fade. You're here for a purpose. If you feel called, answer it. Click join to get access to exclusive information, in-depth insights, and a strong community. This is not just a membership. It is an awakening. Step into your divine mission. Join the chosen. As time passed, people began to wonder what you were doing. They started hunting for signs of failure, assuming you'd have something to argue about. They only uncovered one thing, a mystery. Nothing makes an insecure person feel more worried than something they don't understand. They were more obsessive as their lack of information grew. They began reaching out to you in ways they had not done before, searching for information, delivering messages not intended for you, and trying to extort a response from you. When they were younger, they thought they were in command, but now they were chasing shadows, seeking for proof that they were still significant. As a result, moving in quiet is a magnificent experience. When you stop explaining who you are, analyzing your actions, and responding completely, you become a mystery. They are afraid because they can't read you. They are unable to foresee you. They are unable to offer you control. You can observe how they built their branding based on your feedback. They thrived on the emotions you had. Their vitality depended on yours. But once you decided to pursue your own path, when you stepped away and focused your attention within, they had nothing else to feed on. It was at that point that they recognized you had never been the weak link. Your presence was the source. Their preoccupation eventually led to their failure. You advanced as they remained to observe, waiting for a moment of weakness. You continued to win and grow. They are now unable to escape the past and are replaying earlier battles, whilst you are trying to build a future so far ahead of them that they will never catch up. They were in a state of fear because they had forgotten that you were never just another player in their game. You were in command of the whole board. They believed they had everything under control. They were certain that they could use your flaws against you, so they built their methods on your past. On that basis, they murmured your name in places you hadn't even visited, intending to ruin your reputation. They laid their traps before you came, expecting you to walk straight into them. What they didn't realize was that while they were busy preparing against you, you were already changing the script. Despite their attempts to stop you, despite their belief that they could reveal every mistake you made, you had already turned it into a lesson with the understanding that the truth would triumph over falsehoods. You let each and every story that they spread to run its course. They were so focused on pulling you down that they neglected to realize that you had fully quit playing their game. People who depend on manipulation assume that everyone else acts similarly. They are expecting an emotional reaction from you, a fight for affirmation, and a desire to refute their assertions. Nonetheless, you did not waste any time in building your empire. You had them dig their own graves. They sought to set you up, but you refused to fall for it. They expected you to go by the wayside, but instead you climbed even higher than before. When they saw that their techniques were not providing the anticipated outcomes, they hurriedly tried to make changes and devise new ways to pursue you. It was already over at that moment. However, since they were so focused on playing against you, they never took the time to assess their own condition. They were overextended, made poor decisions, and played themselves out of the game. Where did they obtain the notion that they could control you? It's gone. Their previous level of influence. It does not exist since you did not fight with them. Rather, you let them ruin themselves. And what's the last step? You were untouchable as you walked away. You did not need to argue or justify your case. The silence is what you let speak for itself. You let your successes speak for themselves. As a result, they had no choice but to accept their loss. While you continued to achieve successes, they thought they had you in their hands. It looked like they were in authority. In the end, they were the ones who took advantage of a non-existent opportunity. They believed that they had more time. They felt you would always be available, constantly having something to say and constantly engaged. While they focused on little conflicts, you were laboring to guarantee that God's grace would be present throughout the battle. Click Super. Thank you, and please donate $100 to spread His light. Your donation sows seeds that develop His kingdom. Be the benefit. It isn't just that you won. You have also grown. As a consequence, they are presently in turmoil, trying to figure out how they lost control of a game they thought they controlled. You never had to reduce your standards to match theirs. You never had to meet them in the gutter where they tried to drag you because you played by your own rules and on your own terms. They were unable to compete with you. They were too emotional, too desperate to see you fail, and too blind to see you had already moved on to more important endeavors. Currently, the situation has reversed. The same people who formerly insulted you, ignored you, and questioned your talents are now on the outside looking in when it matters. Your name. It is not with mockery, but with surprise, bewilderment, and remorse. At the same time, they watch from a distance, hoping to comprehend how you become untouchable and how you accomplish this achievement. They predicted that you would be unsuccessful. They were expecting your return with a halting stride. You, on the other hand, have achieved such a high level that they are unable to approach you. It is not your accomplishment in and of itself that concerns them the most. It is more likely that they had no involvement in it. There was no need for hegemony. There will be no petty clapbacks. There is nothing except indisputable elevation. To put it simply, nothing hurts a person more than seeing you thrive in a scenario that they said you could never achieve. They were searching for an answer. They intended that you become a victim. Instead, they were confronted with stillness, success, and the crushing knowledge that they had never posed a danger in the first place. They once laughed at you publicly and loudly. Your ambitions were mocked. They rolled their eyes at your ideas and swore under oath that you would never achieve anything without their approval. They ignored you because they did not give you the chance to prove your value. However, at the moment, they are the ones doing the most, putting on a full-fledged show in order to catch even a portion of your attention while you are still in their clutches. They might behave as if you didn't matter. They were able to convince themselves that you were beneath them as long as you worked hard and played a little role. However, as you achieved a higher level, you surpassed them, their expectations, and all they thought and knew about you. This is when the switch would flip. At that time, the sense of desperation set in. They anticipate you pleading to be included on the list. It was vowed that you'd come to regret leaving. They were so certain that you couldn't succeed without them. They never contemplated what may happen if you succeeded, and they are now unable to grasp it. They're darting about, seeking for ways to reconnect with you, and they're hoping you'll glance in their direction, even if just for a second. Eventually, their group chats became into fan groups. They are now muttering your name with a combination of curiosity, interest, and a hint of envy that they cannot hide. These are the same voices that used to speculate about you. They investigate each of your acts, evaluate your approach, and try to figure out how you were able to pull it off. What led the person they had previously ignored to morph into the person they now secretly adore from afar. They wait for you to notice them and watch with eagerness. They attempt to ease their way back into your life by leaving clues, tasting, and testing the waters. You, on the other hand, see them for precisely what they are, opportunists striving to preserve their relevance in a story that no longer features them. The irony is that you couldn't give a damn. You are unaffected by their sudden adoration or full obsession. You are not in need of their approval. You do not need their approval, despite the fact that they had the potential to support you. They choose to have misgivings about you. Instead, they are to blame. At this moment, you are the major attraction, and others are only spectators. Take a look at these. They're free to conjecture. Allow them to chatter whether they are there or not. The performance must continue, mostly because at the end of the day, they are no longer laughing. How about you? You don't hear them at all. There was no need for you to argue. It was unnecessary for you to protect yourself. You weren't even obligated to respond. Growing was the only thing needed of you, and it highlighted every flaw that they tried to hide. Because of your promotion, they were forced to confront a truth that they had been avoiding for many years. To be honest, they were not quite as powerful as they claimed to be. They were not as safe as they claimed to be in the beginning. They weren't even ahead of you in the distance. To put it another way, they built their confidence by pulling you down. They built their whole identity on retaining superiority over you in order to feel superior to you. They assumed they had control of the situation. As long as you questioned your ability and defended yourself, and as long as you kept responding to their ridiculousness when you eventually came to a standstill and recognized you'd outgrown them, that's when the panic set in, simply because they need your presence more than you needed theirs. That was the part they were totally ignorant of. In the absence of you as their goal, and without you as a distraction, they were forced to face themselves, and the consequences were not pleasant. They lacked feeling of direction. They had made no substantial progress, and they had wasted years of effort plotting against someone who had never really competed with them in the first place. The fact is that they are still exactly where they were before, but they are now playing catch-up, rushing to keep up appearances and saying that they have been changing while everyone is watching each and every one of your motions. You're working on the next one while they're spreading rumors, and you're racking up triumphs while they're focused on you. You are focusing on moving forward in your level. Because of this, they will never get the opportunity to meet you. They believed they could outplay you since they had never played the same game as you. They were brazen, passionate, and impetuous. They thought in the short term and were intent on winning quick victory. However, your moves were really exact. You played a lengthy game. They celebrated little victories, but you created something they will never be able to touch. Currently, the gap between you and them is too large to overcome. In addition, you realize that not everyone deserves to sit at your kitchen table. Some people will not show up until the feast is ready, even though they were never there to help in its preparation. You never got their support. They never contributed or believed in you. And how about those individuals? They can no longer access the database. You are now safeguarding your energy. You behave in line with the circumstances, allowing your achievement to be the only recognition they will ever get since they wanted you to fail. They had no option but to watch you succeed instead. As a consequence, they were compelled to face something for which they were unprepared, the truth. You were never wanting. That was always true in a loud and bold fashion. They declared that they were superior to you, expressing great confidence that you would never accomplish anything without their help. They derided your efforts, ignored your progress, and made it their job to remind you at all times that you were not on the same level as them. On the other hand, they're now emulating you. You can see them taking notes right now. They are now reviewing your blueprint in an effort to solve the enigma of how you were able to become everything they said you couldn't. When individuals progress beyond their egos, they are so focused on showing their superiority that they never plan for the day when the person they look down on climbs above them. This is the difficulty with those who grow beyond their ego. They had no notion things would improve for them. They had no notion they'd be on the outside looking in. As a result, they are now obliged to chase a kind of success that they previously despised. They think they can get rid of you, erase you, and make you doubt your own potential. In truth, all they did was motivate you to be unstoppable in your objectives. You were able to turn every problem they gave you into an opportunity. Every insult provided as fuel. Your resistance has only grown with each effort to break you. And at this moment, they wish they had your mindset.